Hey, this is Brandon Puffer with Brandon Puffer Speaks, Coach Puff Positive. And if you really want to learn how to level up your life, you should be listening to the Time to Shine Today podcast with my good friend Scott Ferguson. Let's level up.
Time to Shine Today podcast Varsity Squad. This is Scott Ferguson. We're at episode 327 with my good buddy, my brother from another mother, Brandon Puffer, Coach Puff Positive. My guy Brandon grew up a rock star baseball player and including other sports as well. Got to play in the show in the big leagues. Even got a World Series ring with the Boston Red Sox back in 2004. Went through some tough times. But those times really shaped my good friend Brandon into the man he is today. He's rebuilt trust with people, took responsibility for all his actions. And these are the kinds of guys that I like to be around and associate with. You know, I've been told that we'll be the same 5 years from now, except for the books you read and the people you meet. And I am so glad that I met Brandon. So you might want to break out your digital note taker or just a pen, pad, and paper. And take some notes because Brandon's going to show you how to blast through adversity and overcome any challenges. So without further ado, here's my good friend, Coach Puff Positive, Brandon Puffer. Let's level up. Time to Shine Today podcast Varsity Squad. This is Scott Ferguson, and I got my buddy, elite athlete here that has really leveled up his life. He has a hell of a story, which I'm not going to share anything with you right now. I'm going to have Brandon Puffer, my good friend here, share it with you. But Brandon I'll share just a tad bit. He went from being a Major League Baseball player who was on the roster of the 2004 Boston Red Sox, the first, like 86 years or something, the first time they had won something. But he made it from there to being an inmate. And we're going to get into that little story. Now he's a mentor coach for high school boys, getting them the skills of not only baseball, but life set up for them to move forward. His story is one of redemption and overcoming adversity. And he's hopes to just change one person at a time that struggles with choices, mindset, addiction, and also finding that freaking purpose in life. And Brandon, thank you so much for coming on. Please introduce yourself to Time to Shine Today podcast Varsity Squad. But first, what's your favorite color and why?
That's a great question, Scott. My favorite color is green.
Green, okay.
And I don't know if it's because Yvette's eyes are so beautiful and they're green. She wears a green shirt, they pop out. But I've always loved the color green.
You know what? I don't want to step on your story too much, but green is kind of a rebirth color, right? Spring comes around, thing goes green. I think it runs right with you. And it's also in your color wheel, you handsome devil. You know, so it works right. I love the Southern draw. My boys here in Austin, Texas, which I love making my way over there to speak and also roll a little bit of my jiu-jitsu. But Brandon, let's have me shut up here. Let's get to this story, the roots, brother, and how you've, leveled up, fell a little bit, overcame, and now you're helping others.
Absolutely, Scott. Well, first off, it's an honor to be here. I appreciate you having me. My story is just what you said. It's a story of, first it started with just a dream. As a young man, dreaming of becoming a Major League Baseball player, was able to achieve that. And then it worked itself into choices and consequences, which was always kind of intertwined in my story growing up. But then it took another level there as I was making some choices off the field, trying to balance the life of being a pro baseball player and taking care of myself off the field. And I just didn't really handle it all that well. So it becomes a story of, like you said, consequences, and then ultimately now redemption of life after a rock bottom.
So let's get into it a little bit. Let's dig a little bit deeper. Like, okay, so you're probably a high school standout, right? Like, I mean, for that, you can turn off the humble hat, brother, because I respect the hell out of people that get to these levels. Okay, and I'm blessed to currently coach a couple Major League Baseball players. Mindset. But let's dig into your mindset. Let me ask you, you were good, you were noticed, you're probably given things, kind of like the Varsity Blues movie or, something like that. You're given some stuff. Did you feel like you were untouchable in a sense? Like, hey, man, like everything's going my way. And if so, what does that mindset feel like?
Yes. Well, that's a great question, Scott. And yeah, you do. You kind of tend to. I was you use the word blessed. I was blessed early on with ability and size and those things that help factor into, being successful on the field or the court or whatever it was at the time. And you do, it's such a dichotomy for me because it's like your mindset has to be, and I still teach this to this day, when you're on the mound, in the batter's box, whatever it is, you're better. You can't be beat. You're better than that person you're competing against. And not in a proud, cocky way, certainly, but a quiet, humble confidence of, I won't be beat. And that's what I teach on self-talk. The problem is when you get on the other side of the line, is how do you turn that off? You're 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and things are getting thrown your way. And some guys are just better at navigating that than I was personally. But yeah, I mean, that is the mindset of, and still needs to be of, I'm going to succeed. I'm going to beat you. And if you beat me, that's a fluke and I'm coming right back at you. You know what I mean? Probably the same in jiu-jitsu or anything else.
Yeah. And there's so much, it didn't play near your level, but there's so much failure in baseball. Yeah. And so, again, the whole adage of, you go 3 for 10, you're in the Hall of Fame, right? So do you want to share a little bit of your story? I should have asked off camera, but the story of you getting in a little bit of trouble.
Oh, 100%, Scott. That's the biggest part of my story, man.
Yes, please. Let's go there if you don't mind.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm wide open, man. Yeah, I mean, I'm literally going to be writing a book. Actually, I'm an open book, and now literally we'll have a book on it. So it's
I can't wait.
Yeah, it's a little bit embarrassing. It's a little bit, obviously, there's some shame involved. But at the end of the day, I've realized that kind of opening up and being honest and vulnerable about that has helped people to open up, and other people going through the same thing or maybe on their way down that path. Hopefully and that's why I'm open about it. And I've actually had folks in the baseball industry say, hey, let's just kind of put that on the side and move forward. And I just say, I can't do it. That's a big part of my story. So to what you're alluding to, Scott, again, that battle back and forth. I grew up in an interesting home. My mom, to this day, is a pastor at Saddleback Church with Rick Warren out in California. A lot of people know about. So just really like an angel, man. Like everything was just, let's pray about it. Let's read. And my dad was a big, strong, tough dude, athlete, liked to fight, had a temper, and I was like, man, I want to be like that. So I kind of always gravitated that way. And with that, with addiction in my family, that was always an issue for me. And so where it really came to the forefront was in 2008. I was back with the Rangers. I had played a little big league ball. I was in Double-A in Frisco, kind of the Bull Durham Crash Davis role, man. I was in my 30s. These youngsters like Ellis Andrews and Chris Davis and Derek Holland and just dudes who were like 19, 20-year-old phenoms. I was there, ironically, to mentor them and help them, with their routines and what it takes to be a professional.
Sure.
But I always had that battle of taking care of myself off the field. So these youngsters would ask me every day, Puff, come out with us, man. Let's go have a good time. Let's go club. So guys, I can't do it. I'm really trying to get my life right. I'd had 5 years of sobriety at one point, fell off the wagon during a tough life circumstance, and was just constantly knowing what was right, but not really always doing what was right. And what was right for me was not going out and drinking and partying because I just didn't handle it well. For other guys, great, but not for me. Well, anyway, fast forward a little bit. September 13th of that season, we're a couple days away from wrapping up. We're in the championship series. It's a Friday. I'm driving to the yard, and I'm just thinking, man, I'm going to go out with the guys tonight. Again, they've been all over me. I literally said, man, one night can change my life, guys. They're like, oh, it's one night. So I said, well, let's just do it. Let's do it. It's just one night.
Right.
And Scott, sure enough, for the sake of time and also for, your viewers, your audience, won't go into too much detail, although I would be happy to anytime.
Sure.
September 13th, same as any other day, go to the ballpark, play a game, no big deal. I'm a routine guy, man. I did the same thing all day.
Right.
September 14th, I woke up in a cell with an orange jumpsuit on. They said my name over the intercom. Don't remember the night before. I had committed a felony, burglary of a habitation with an intent to commit a felony, which at the time I still thought was, oh, what a stupid thing. Dumb mistake, but didn't mean any harm. It was just out partying, having fun with the boys, right? For that, I would receive 5 years in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. So big boy prison. And I went and served 3.5 years in prison. And, that's where I learned so much about surrender and humility. And we talked about being 10 foot tall and bulletproof. Well, I had some time to really think about what I needed to change and reflect on. And humility was certainly a big part of it. but I mean, just habits, thoughts. My thoughts are just so, as you know, our thoughts are just so important in everything we do.
Absolutely.
And if you just let them run willy nilly and kind of like a garden, you don't tend to them, man, they can get you in a lot of trouble. And I just ended up in that spot before I even knew it. It felt like, but looking back on it, it had worked its way to that point.
When you were in prison, was there somebody in there that, like, because you said that you kind of did a turnaround, lack of a better term, Brandon, was there somebody in there that, like, you turned to, or they turned to you and they helped you level up even in the situation you were in?
That's awesome. So that was the biggest thing for me. To me at that point, probably like a lot of our listeners, prison was just, hey, just a bunch of bad people. They belong there, whatever. I didn't think about it.
Sure.
And then you get in there and you realize, the amount of just really good men that made poor choices, man.
Right.
And a lot of them aren't getting out like I did. I mean, I met and had cellies that had 3 life sentences, and they weren't going to get out, and they weren't bad people. They made some really bad choices. And so, yeah, what I did, as soon as, it sounds kind of cliche, but as soon as they took me out of the courtroom, stripped me of my clothes, put me in what I was going to be wearing for the next few years, and the bars clanked, I heard that clank, I just surrendered everything. And for me, I'm a Christian, but I mean, whoever it is you're surrendering to, it was like, okay, God, this is where it got me. I surrender. To that point, the prayer was, keep me out of jail. To that point, the prayer was just, hey, don't let me go. Now I was like, all right, what do you got for me? And so I just tried to encourage people. I tried to be an encouragement. There were folks that certainly encouraged me, and a lot of it was just seeing them. Yeah.
Right.
Seeing who was in there.
You know what you are, man? You know who Damon West is?
That's a good buddy of mine, man. I love Damon.
You are a coffee bean, bro. You are, because in Squad, if you haven't heard it, if you put a carrot in boiling water, what does it do? It makes the carrot soft. If you put an egg in the boiling water, it makes it hard on the outside. If you put a coffee bean, the coffee bean still gets boiled. It's still shitty for the coffee bean, but it becomes the water. And that's what my friend Brandon here has become. This is freaking awesome. Man. I cannot wait for your book, bro. I better get a signed copy, man.
Okay. Man, hey, I have chills right now, literal chills, because when you were going to ask me later about a book recommendation, I was going to shout out Damon and John on the coffee bean, because it's been huge. Man, I go work out in my coffee bean shirt, and everyone in the gym asks about it. And I text Damon, hey, man, everyone wants to be a coffee bean now.
It's not just because of the prison story either, because
sure.
But it's something that just resonates with a real comeback story. Something that it goes there. So let me ask you something. When you've kind of leveled up through, do you have any brushback being a former felon or a felon in coaching kids baseball?
100%. Yes, 100%.
And how do you handle that? Because you have to surrender that too, to the truth of it. But how do you handle that, brother?
Yeah, great question. So what I do is I'm very upfront about it. I get out in front of it. I let folks know, hey, you're going to trust me with your son, with not only developing him on the field, but off the field. And what's crazy, Scott, is in this particular circumstance with our youth program, it ends up being an asset, because I'm able to say to them, look, most of what makes me a good coach, I'm going to get a little credibility because I played in the big leagues. Okay, that's great. Doesn't mean I'm a good coach just because I played. But I also have this story of how I'm going to help your son deal with adversity and rock bottom, and how do you bounce back. And so typically it ends up being a great asset. Now, in terms of outside of that, I have competitors that like to throw that at people and go, hey, you don't want to go play there. Look at this, and that's all good. You just have to deal with that. And man, I don't know if I could be hired at McDonald's today, to be honest with you. Right. But I've been so fortunate, right? Honestly, and rentals and things of that nature, we have to work around some things, but just have a great support cast. I really do. And I've been doing this long enough now and have enough, I've had some, letters of recommendation from guys like Nolan Ryan and our pastor, just different folks. So that stuff is helpful when you have people in your corner that are saying, hey, we knew him before, we know him now. Yes, that was bad. And he's admitted that and owned that, but here's who he is now. So it's really turned into an asset in terms of helping the kids and relating to kind of some struggles they go through.
Love it. And when you're molding these kids and they're coming in, because baseball kind of is life in a sense. There's a lot of failure that goes on that you have to overcome, and you come back and you're working with a young man, and he's going through a slump. He's capable. How do you coach him up?
Yeah, so that's 100% boils down to checkup from the neck up, 100%. We're very fortunate. I stick with the 17U age group in the summer because they're knocking on the door, going to college ball or being drafted. And we've had a few drafted. We've had some going to really big schools. So I know they've got the ability, 100%. So it all comes down to, okay, what are your thoughts? What are you thinking when you're on deck? What are you thinking when you're in the box? What are you thinking when you're on the mound? Are you preparing for what's about to happen, or are you just reacting? So it comes down to there's focused breathing, self-talk, and then really just the confidence level. And then once they get a little bit of success, it usually takes off. But again, to your point, it's always going to work back into a quote unquote slump. So where is our approach? Where's our mentality when that hits? Because it's going to hit. And so just the guys who can really keep that more level tend to succeed and understand it a little more. And then, there's some guys that they beat themselves up and it's really hard for them to get out of it. But I just consistently try to preach that mental side of the game. It's just so huge and it's not talked about enough.
Yeah. And also there's kind of like, because if you're coaching these, the under 18 and whatnot, they're kind of like all-star players in a sense in their own right at their age group. And you kind of maybe bring them back to the basics with the checkup from the neck up, because a lot of people try to change stance. That was me, like, hey, I'm George Brett today, hey, I'm Robin Yount. Hey, it was me, and the coach is just like, be Scott Ferguson, dude.
Yeah.
That's you. I love that you bring them back to the basics and whatnot. So when you're working with these kids and you're mentoring them too, like, and I'm a big believer that the more you mentor, the more immortal you become, right? And you're passing it on. So, but these kids know that you went to the show, you did this. Is there any good question that you wish they would ask you about getting on in life that they never do ask? You wish there's a question that they ask?
I do. I'm going to think of a specific one, but I wish they would ask more questions in general, Scott. Like that age group. I mean, literally after every practice, every game, it's like, what do you guys got? Anyone have questions? And they don't ask. And what it would be is something as simple as, okay, at that level, where did you find yourself succeeding to get there? But what I really want to ask me is, where did you fail? Because I look back at my career and I didn't do some of those mental things so well. When I got to the show, it can be overwhelming, man. Yeah. And you're facing Barry Bonds and these guys. And I don't know if a lot of guys will admit it, but that messed with my head. I had to really lock in on self-talk, and laser sharp focus. And I think they assume that I just have it going on and none of that stuff messed with me because I made it. And I can't tell them I'm a bigger guy. And it's like, oh, I bet Coach Puff never struggled. I'm like, man, you have no idea. I struggle big time with so many things. So I end up being vulnerable and letting that out so they can kind of let their guard down and go, oh, man. I'll usually say, look, I'm saying this because I needed this or still need it. And that's why I'm always bringing it up to you,
Yeah. In the kids' brains really, a lot of times because I blessed to be able to coach a lot of up and coming kids to get them on the PGA Tour, right? Not with golf because I absolutely suck with the mindset of golf. And what happens is, so I'm a member at like PGA National, right? And that's where like Tiger and Dustin, everyone are members, and they see these guys walk through and play their practice rounds. These kids are like, oh, this is awesome. And so you might be king of that course, like you were king of your school, but then you get out to the next level and you're shit, So do you talk to those kids about, listen, man, you're good, but do you get them prepared for what's about to come? And if you do, Brandon, what is some of it that you say to them and share with them?
Yes, 100% I do. And you're right. We are getting pretty high-level kids from their school in their area. And being that I was the same way, I grew up in Southern California, and it was a really good baseball hotbed. Then I signed out of high school, and I went to rookie ball, and I'm like, whoa. Everybody was the best where they came from. And they're not just coming from the United States. They're Dominican Republic, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, whatever. And it's like, wow, what's going to separate us? So we talk about the separator. Like, guys, you're going to be good. You are very good. But there's going to come a time you step on that campus next fall or you get drafted and go to rookie ball where everybody's good. So what's going to separate you? And what we talk about are things like your preparation. I'm fortunate to have a lot of good buddies that are professional scouts. We'll bring them in and talk. And the constant theme is they're watching you from the moment you leave your car to the moment you get to the field to how they want to see you fail. Like, okay, great. You're 4 for 4. Everybody can be happy. How do you fail? How do you respond to your parents if you have an interaction with them? All these little, quote unquote, little things that aren't so little is what's going to separate you, because there's going to come a time, to your point. And then the next thing is just who can be more consistent. Like, you can be really good on one day and then the rest of the time. The guys at the next level, it's kind of a war of attrition, man. Who's going to be really consistent, and good day, bad day, great field, poor field, bus ride, plane ride, whatever you just went through, who can be the most consistent in their mindset and their routine. And then eventually you just kind of outlast guys because you're just as talented. And I think guys give up before their big moment comes.
Absolutely, man.
Frustrated.
Yeah, it's funny. It kind of goes back to the old DJ Derek Jeter story with Mattingly, right? Running off the field. Derek is walking Mattingly. He's like, let's run. And he's like, Derek's like, no one's watching us. He's like, you don't know who's watching us, brother.
Yes.
You don't know. And that's so true.
Yes.
The
amount of times we have said that, and the amount of stories we have on a parent who was on the other team, who's a college coach, who wanted to turn a guy in, and then he didn't run down the line one time because it was 104 degrees in his third at bat.
Right.
And the guy came over to me and said, hey, man, I was going to turn that guy into a school, but I guess he's lazy. And I'm like, well, he's not, but he took a play off, and that cost him. And guys, the more stories you have of those, the guys listen. And we're fortunate, man. We got guys that buy in, and they really do go play the game hard in the right way. But those are the types of things we definitely encourage for them, because to your point, you're the big fish right now, but when you get to that next spot, nobody cares what you did in high school.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. So how do you want your dash to remember that little line in between your incarnation date and your expiration date, your life date and your death date? Hopefully it's way down the road, my brother, but how do you want it remembered?
Oh, I love that question. I actually heard you ask that question to someone else, and I was like, what a phenomenal question. I listened to a few of your podcasts, and
thanks,
I
man.
really thought about it. And I was like, you know what, man, I hope, especially with my family and my children, and then anyone I've touched in terms of with GPS and the baseball program and all that, I hope that they can say that I was honest. I cared about them. It was relationship driven, transformational, not transactional, that I really looked for an opportunity to encourage people everywhere I went. I tried to be a light everywhere I went. My fiance Yvette always says, your presence is your power. When you walk in, the room changes. And I at first I was like, I don't want to accept that. That's kind of imposter syndrome kicks in. And she's like, no, trust me. Everywhere you go, I watch. And I'm like, wow. And it kind of tears me up, because I'm like, I didn't ask for that. I don't deserve that. But at the end of the day, if that's true, I want to use that for good and to be an encourager to everybody I'm around.
I love that. I love that. So what do you think then? They see you. I could just picture you on as a coach, pretty level, or you're leveled up, you're fired up, but you're happy. You want to see them succeed. But what is there, if anything, that people might misunderstand the most about you?
Oh gosh, that's awesome. So I think I really do think at times that I'm really kind of soft-hearted. Like, you almost cried a second ago talking about these kids, man. Like, I'm not with you, but I'm 6'3", 265, big, just big dude out there, got the tats and all that. And it's like, I think it can be intimidating, and I don't want it to be. It's like, and on top of that, you take my story where I served 3.5 years and stuff I went through. I think people just assume like this is a hard dude. It's like, no, man, I'm a soft dude. I want to love you. I want to hug those dudes.
Right.
I want to, I think it can be misleading. And I think that's why I'm always real intentional about smiling at people and wherever I go. Cause if it's the gym or the grocery store, whatever, I don't want to be like, that's a big tough guy. I want to be like, no, the tenderhearted dude, I really am.
love that you're saying that, because I'm 6'1", 265, right? So we're big dudes, and we walk in, people are like, oh, there's the bully. You know what I'm saying? And I'm from the Midwest, bro. And I walk up and I give everybody a hug, and people, especially I live in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. It's like Jupiter, Florida. And it's like you get like all the New York and Boston and Philly people that come to this side of the state. And I'm walking up, they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, it's just me, dude. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not going to change it. I'm not going to invade their space anymore. If they're not comfortable, I'm not going to change who I am. And I love that you're staying authentic to that, man. So, you've listened to my show, so I know that you have probably also saw, being your age, very close, I'm 50. So Back to the Future, the movie. Let's get in that DeLorean with Marty McFly. Let's go back to the Double Deuce, the 22-year-old Brandon. Okay, now you've told a little bit of your story, but what might you not change so many things, because you had a hell of a journey. Some of it sucked, but it made you who you are. but what would you do? Maybe shorten that learning curve or level up, maybe just a little bit quicker at 22.
Yeah, great question. So what I would do is a couple things, and I'm going to go back to what's written on my mirror. And it's written on my mirror because I'm still working on it. 46-year-old Brandon needs it too, but it's don't be so quick to be offended. I just get offended so easy. Everyone's against me. Everyone's after me. I'm mad. It's like, no, everyone's got their own stuff going on.
Yeah, dude.
Look outside of your, and that along those same lines, it's don't be so consumed is the word I'm looking for. Self-absorbed.
Yeah.
Look to serve others. Look at others, and you'll elevate yourself. Being in baseball, it was routine, and my workout, my next outing, everything was me. And I just would really go back and go, hey, just give more of yourself.
There you go.
And you'll probably be able to relax and perform a little better.
Yeah.
Because I was a tight performer too when I was pitching.
Right.
And I think I could have relaxed and enjoyed it more.
Sure.
No, not just the pitching aspect, but life in general.
Yeah.
I would have gotten outside myself a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. And then just not be so offended. And again, still working on these things.
Yeah.
That's why I tell my mirror to this day. But yeah.
Me too. I mean, because your mind is like, okay, so Zig Ziglar said that you get in proportion to what you've given, right? And you made it through levels when you were younger because you're giving your all-out effort, and you're given the rewards for that, which is Babe Ruth ball or whatever, Sandy Koufax, so whatever you played there, right? But as you get older, the dynamics change on that, right? It's like you've got to give differently than just your own. And I'm not using selfish in a bad way, but in a good way, your own selfish efforts, because there's so much more responsibility that comes. And that's what you're doing now. And I love it. So, Brandon, give me 3 things outside of like your phone or anything electronic, anything like that. But give me 3 things that you can't live without.
Well, Bible would be number 1. My quiet time for me. That's
I'm Christian too, brother. I'm proud. Good deal.
Awesome. Yeah, roadmap for me. Got to have it. Can't live without. In fact, when I was serving time, that was the only thing they couldn't take away from you. So I had my little onion sack, and I always had that with me.
Nice.
Okay. So couldn't live without that. I'm going to have to say, and this is a little vain, but it's my self-therapy, man. I don't think I could live without a weight room.
Nice. I feel you. Yeah.
I watch a lot of Jay Glazer and just Living in the Gray.
Oh, dude.
I love them. And I've been really and it's like when they ask, what is it that helps you, keep that gray away?
Yeah.
Honestly, it's that. It's fitness, working out, lifting, kind of zooming out. It's the only time I don't use my phone. I use my phone to listen to music and follow.
Right.
I don't respond.
Right.
So my Bible, my workout, and then and obviously not in this order, but then it's just the family relationship, man. There's no way I could live without being relational with Yvette and my kids and my parents, and my brother. In fact, that probably needs to jump right to second behind the Bible. They're gonna get on me like, I knew your workout was more important, but there's no way, man. I mean, and honestly, Scott, a lot of people haven't had to do this. I lived 3.5 years without a phone, and that was when we were used to phones.
Sure.
And I literally would reach off my bunk in my prison cell to grab my phone. And I'm like, wait a minute. Oh, wait, that's not. It ain't right. There. So, and of course, I'm attached to it again. But 3.5 years, I didn't have it, so I actually got to figure out like, who am I? What do I need in this time? And it wasn't a phone. It was my Bible. It was a lot of great books. It was going to the prison yard and making sure I kept fitness at the forefront. But then it was the relationship, the letters with my family. I mean, that's everything, man.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So then what is your definition of life well lived?
My definition of life well lived would be a life that was lived well with your family, with your relationships, your close friends, the people in your circle. Because I do believe, and I think it's cliche to say when you're on your deathbed, you're not going to be worried about all the things you tried to attain or whatever. It's going to be relationships. But I believe that every time I read that,
100%.
That's true. There's no doubt that that's the most important thing. And you take those relationships away right now, and any money or program or book or anything, that I'm doing that might be a little bit of a positive in my life is just worth nothing. And by the way, I don't even think I'm in that situation. Especially the big adversity I went through. Without family and friends support, and you find out who your family and friends are, I'm nothing. I'm honestly nothing. Without God blessing me and that family support, there's not a thing I can do on my own.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And Time to shine today, podcast Varsity Squad. We're back, and Brandon, we're going to hook up one day. We're going to rock some stages, and we'll probably go through a few of these questions. But you got 5 seconds to answer them with no explanation. So you've listened to a couple. I'm blessed that you have. So you know the rules on that, right? No explanations. You ready to rock?
Yes.
All right. Brandon, what is the best leveling up advice you've ever received?
Be careful how you treat the people on your way up, because they're the same people you see on your way down.
Wow. I'm writing that down, squad. Awesome. So give me a personal habit of yours that contributes to your success.
My morning routine, and it's reading, breathing and meditation, prayer, and exercise.
Beautiful.
And being very consistent with my routine.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Your most commonly used emoji when you text.
Easy. The punch with the blow up, the knuckles, the punch with the pound.
There you go.
Everyone's like, there's no doubt about it, man. That's
it.
Yeah.
Nicknames growing up.
Puff Daddy.
Love Puff Daddy.
Yeah. Love it. I was Puff Daddy before Sean.
I love it. Chess, checkers, or Monopoly?
Checkers.
Love it. Me too. Keep it simple, bro.
Yeah.
Best ballpark as a visiting player.
PNC Park in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it's a sweet park. I love it. Love it. Go-to ice cream flavor.
White mint chocolate chip.
Nice. There's a sandwich called the Puff Daddy, the B Puff. We'll call it the B Puff. Build that sandwich for me.
Yeah, man. We're gonna put on double meat. We're gonna put on some double chicken.
Some man candy bacon.
Yeah. Oh, there's gonna be bacon on there. 100%. There's gonna be black olives.
There you go.
Always bacon and black olives with
All
extra
right.
meat, lettuce, and just light mayo. But
Nice.
you got to keep a little healthy. Light mayo.
Definitely. You're gonna come to South Florida. We're gonna make those, bro. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
Favorite charity and or organization you like to give your time or money to?
Yeah. So for me, it's our church, Celebration
Nice.
Church. Yeah.
Okay.
So I believe in the tithing aspect, and so we're not always great about it, but when we are, that's typically where we go.
Where do you attend?
It's called Celebration Church in Austin, Texas.
Okay.
Pastor Joe Champion. Yeah, he's awesome.
Well, if I'm there on a Sunday next time, I'll come and attend with you, man, for sure.
That would
be going someday.
Awesome.
That'd be
loves
awesome.
It, man. He's hilarious. Former college athlete. It's great.
Nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Last question. You can elaborate on this one. I hope you answer it the way I think you will. But what's the best decade of music? 60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s?
The 80s, brother.
There you go. I was going to say your age. You better say 80s.
Oh.
You grew up in the best decade ever. You know, you had the invasion of like U2, Duran, Men at Work, but then you had the Big Hair, Don't Care. You had the thrash, Metallica.
Duran was going to be my first one, and then you're going to Poison and Skid Row and all that.
Rap music, you Run DMC, man. Like
Beastie
Boys.
Yeah.
It's like
LL Cool J was just taking off. Beautiful. Yeah.
I love it. So, Brandon, where can we find you, brother? Yeah,
good question. So I'm BrandonPuffer.com, and I think they're still kind of revamping that thing, but
it'll be up and ready by the time this drops. We'll be good.
Okay, perfect. So BrandonPuffer.com, and then on Twitter, it's Coach Puff Positive, and it's POSITV. So Coach PUFF POSITV.
Beautiful. And squad, that will be in the show notes as well. And Brandon, do me one last solid and leave us with one last knowledge nugget we can take with us, internalize, and take action on.
Will, Scott, and it all comes down to, you had a question kind of and it's the grand finale, right? And it comes down to, what am I most fired up about today? And what should we all be most fired up today? In my opinion, we woke up, and a lot of people didn't. God gave us that next breath. And literally, because we have this day, whether it's a divine appointment, someone you meet, a thought shift, something you read, you can literally change your entire life for the better today. And we're being positive, but for the worse. So be very mindful of your thoughts. Be very, very mindful of your thoughts. And I was going to recommend the Coffee Bean book, but also As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. Just breaks down that thought process like no other. It's a game changer.
I love it. Great recommendations there, brother. And squad, we just had a great discussion, but almost a free masterclass from my good friend here, Brandon. He grew up dreaming of playing in the show in Major League Baseball, and he made the choices to get to that level. But with that, the choices became kind of consequences, trying to balance his life, didn't really handle it well. He felt kind of bulletproof, which kind of fed to the addiction that kind of ran through his family a little bit. But then he, hit his low point. He surrendered to God. I'm Christian. He's Christian. We're not here to preach to you, but you surrendered to your creator and get there. And he reminds us to really check up from the neck up, process your thoughts. Are you preparing or are you just reacting? He talked about focused breathing and self-talk and taking action. And if you're starting to work with a coach, it doesn't have to be athletes. You can ask any coach. My clients ask me, hey, ask them, where have you failed? And how did you handle that failure? He wants you to really look as you're kind of going through a slump of what is the separator? Is your preparation on point? And remember that people are constantly watching you no matter what profession you're in. So act as if people are watching you at all times. He wants you to really be consistent. And when you are consistent, you can outlast the competition. And remember, inch by inch, it's a cinch, squad. By the yard, it's hard. So be consistent. Take those baby steps. He's going to be remembered, Brandon, here. He's going to be remembered as someone that metaphorically and realistically slid across home plate, bumped and bruises. But I'll tell you what, he's honest. He cared. He wants to change your relationship transformational, not transactional. He threw that out there, which is absolutely phenomenal. He's planting trees that my boy is probably never going to sit in the shade of. And I got to give, Yvette some love that she reminds Brandon that his presence is his power. And he's a humble man. He might not look like he would be, but he's definitely a humble man. He reminds you, don't be so quick to get offended. I've talked about my 2 New Year's resolutions. 1 is to make someone smile every day. And 2, unless I've hurt you, offended you, I give 0 whats about what you think about me. I just don't get offended. He reminds us to treat people on the way up the same way because you might just see them on the way down. Treat them well, treat them good. Ask yourself, what are you most fired up about today? You were 72 inches above ground, people. We're 6 feet above ground. Get out there, get living, be mindful of your thoughts. And that's what my boy Brandon does. He levels up his health. He levels up his wealth. He's humble, yet he's hungry. Not that he needs it, but he's earned his varsity squad letter here at Time to Shine today. Thank you so much for coming on, brother. I cannot wait to collaborate with you. Rock stages. I absolutely love your guts, man.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. I'm fired up, man. That's awesome.
Appreciate we'll chat soon, brother.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode of Time to Shine Today podcast. Proudly brought to you by Sutter & Nugent Real Estate Excellence, who can be reached at 561-249-7266 and online at www.sutterandnugent.com. If you are a business owner or professional who would like to be interviewed on Time to Shine Today, please visit timetoshinetoday.com/guest. If you like this episode, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. There's a link in the show notes to our website. Also there, you will see our recommended resources. We hope that you will support our show by supporting them. If you like what you've been listening to, it'd be great if you could just give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe while you're at it. I'm your host, Scott Ferguson, and until next time, let's level up. It's our time to shine.